I missed
Take
that.
the
Oh,
gum
no,
already?
no. Never. No.
Okay, so we'll call this workshop meeting for Saugatuck Township Board on Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 11 a.m. to order, and I will call the roll. Aldrich.
Here.
Comrick.
Here.
Marcy.
Here.
Bickford.
Here.
Osmond. Here. We have a quorum. Daniel, did you want to do the Zoom instructions?
Sure, I don't have them
Well, we
in,
don't have anybody.
we don't have anyone yet.
Okay, we'll skip the Zoom instructions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Public comment? We don't have any. Approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Review of the June budget amendment. Daniel,
Okay, so underneath your agenda are two documents, I believe. So one should look like this,
Mm-hmm.
and one should look like this. So this is something that you're gonna be getting at the June meeting. But I did kind of wanna go through some highlights this time. I don't believe that we have done a budget amendment for this year. But we do need to do a budget amendment, just number one, because it's wise to do a budget amendment. Number two, because we have 3 funds that are over budget, which is not the end of the world, but that would require a budget amendment. And we also have quite a bit of revenue that was unanticipated, or we didn't exactly know how much more revenue we'd be getting. So just kind of on that first line, on that first page for here, you can see that the requested budget amendment, that first line is just revenue. So the requested amendment is for $298,450. That means that we have $298,450 that we either weren't anticipating or could not accurately estimate at the time the budget was written.
I'll just remind you that a lot of that is we didn't know what the revenue sharing would be on marijuana
Right.
and then ARPA.
Right.
And then also we got a good sized check from the state because based on the 2020 census, they had held back on state revenue sharing.
Oh, okay.
So that was an extra check. So all this stuff came in that
And all this too is outlined in the narrative.
okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
in the narrative, it speaks to the fact that we did get 56,000 in revenue sharing. 45,000 that's for marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
45,000 for marijuana annual licenses.
Mm.
Building permits were up significantly. We budgeted $40,000 in revenue. We really brought in $90,276.75, so quite a bit more. And then we also received that city, village, and township revenue share from the state, and that was up $95,000 plus. We did receive half of our ARPA money, but we separated that out into a different fund. So it's not reflected in the $298,000 that I'm amending here.
Question. Okay.
Yeah, so that's totally separated out.
And that money's living with Michigan Class, which is our pool investment, so until we choose to access it. Daniel, this narrative is fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Really. got
Thank
that.
you. Yeah. And then
Might not
I,
have to add anything, because I think you got it all here, I didn't realize
Yeah.
it was so detailed.
yeah, I wanted to make sure it was detailed.
Great.
I'm not gonna go through everything. Everything in black is an increase. Everything in red is actually a decrease. There were some departments that we knew we were just not gonna spend any more money, so I just kind of brought those down a bit. But I do wanna kind of highlight where we had the overages. And a lot of them are expected, like supervisor, manager. That's gonna be over because you're paying for 2 managers simultaneously at some point, and my pay went up. So that explains that. So I'm requesting it go up by 15,000. If you go down to professional services, this is actually interesting. So the overage is slightly misleading. We weren't tracking contractual services, or what's the word I was using before?
Well, wasn't it mainly a.
Consultant fees.
Consulting
That's-
fees, we're not,
consulting.
some, like, anything Lene did was broken down and charged to a project or an escrow account appropriately, but that wasn't ever happening with Data-Bird, the engineer, right? Or
That's a little different.
that's not this?
That's not this. So what we
Sorry.
weren't doing was we weren't really tracking when we were using consultants. So we used consultants quite a bit last year. So you use consultants for the rebranding.
Right.
You use consultants to do the hybrid technology. And what I really wanted to do was figure out exactly how much we're spending on consultant services. Not that it's it's a bad thing. I think it's kind of a good thing because it reflects that we're, committed to, offering excellent service. But it just gives us a good indication, I think, of, how often and how much it costs to use those consulting services. So I moved some things around to accurately reflect that. So this isn't necessarily an overage because we just spent so much money. This is more of a readjustment so we know how much money we're spending in consulting services.
The money was spent anyway, we just moved it to a different
Yeah, so some
label.
exactly. So some departments had a reduction because I was able to move that out into a different department. Whereas this department took a hit, but I think it just accurately reflects when we do the budget next year, how much we're really spending on professional services. So just giving us a more accurate picture of where we're spending the money. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And that number could change too, because what John, Lori, and I were working on was actually creating a consulting service line in
Yeah, I was gonna say,
certain
this is an
departments.
GL account.
Yeah, exactly. So
You should
then,
have that separately.
yeah, so then we'll be able to track, okay, did we use consulting services for planning? Did we use it for technology? Is it just kind of a general consulting service? So I'll be able to get even more granular with that number. And this will play a part when I get to the presentation, so that's kind of why I wanted to highlight it. Inspections, we had an overage. I think that's anticipated because when you're bringing in a lot more revenue for inspection services, it's gonna cost more on the labor end. So that is gonna go up. And we also moved a part-time employee to a full-time position, which I think in the amount of inspections and permits we're processing is clearly warranted. We budgeted $40,000 for revenue from building inspections, and then that went up to 90,000 plus. I think that reflects the need for a full-time as opposed to a part-time. And I think that was it in terms of the overages for the departments. And then on the flip side, in the green, it shows you, and then there's actually, before I get to that, if you go to, is there a typo here? No, it's not a typo. Balance requested. So this is general fund, so it's the second line up from where you see the first green. So that actually is $128,100. So that's the requested increase to that department. Now, there's not an overage there right now. And the reason why I am requesting that chunk of change is because I'm proposing that we add to appropriations out to the capital project fund, an additional $110,000. Now, that would be in addition to the $90,000 appropriation out that we had budgeted. And this is going into the capital project fund to really fund the renovation of the building. Currently, we have $49,000 in that capital project fund. So with this 200, it would push that up to $250,000. So it's just kind of, we have the money. We do have a big project on the horizon, which is the building that we're in right now. And we need to start planning to be able to fund that project. So that's where that proposal comes. And I will return to this when I get to my presentation, but it's something that I did want to highlight. That's why the increase is so much. It's not an overage. It's more of we have some extra revenue. Let's effectively use it by putting it into this separate fund, which is a fund essentially for planning for future capital projects. And then at the bottom, you can see proposed revenue went up to, and I think it was $554,000 in the original budget. That went up to $1,253,160. That's what the additional revenue. And then expenditures have gone up to from $954,000 to $1,166,060. And then even with the increases to the funds, and that includes the proposed $110,000 appropriation out, you still have a fund balance of $87,100. So that either can be expensed this year, or that would just go into the general fund.
Great.
Any other questions?
Great job. Any questions for Daniel?
Does this include budget amendment? It's probably totally unrelated. Does it include planning for any type of raises, or is that something totally separate?
That's
The
next
budget
year.
to start.
Yeah, so that's gonna be, that's
Okay.
gonna be when we get to the budget
Oh,
discussion.
okay, okay.
Yeah, but no, that's a good
This is
question,
all
yeah.
current year before the end.
Right, it's an amendment for what
Yeah.
the year we're in.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
cleaning it up so it looks good at the end of the year. Yeah, got it.
And I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure that, cause like any extra money that, or any, I shouldn't say extra money, any money that is not expense, it's just gonna roll over to the general fund. So I just
Right.
wanted to give us like the most accurate picture of what we actually have. So then you can make that decision, like, do you even wanna increase the appropriations out to the capital fund? Do you wanna have a chunk of change that goes into the general fund to build up the general fund? Like, it just gives you the option to know what you actually have and how you wanna utilize that.
Oh, can I just make a note? I think we've mentioned this at board meetings. You know, historically, in terms of doing budget amendments,
Mhm.
I think Griffin did them quarterly.
Mhm.
Joe was of the mind that you did one a year at the end of the year. Some people, you know, and I think we've all discussed, and we've talked to our auditor about this, we
Mhm.
prefer to go back to quarterly.
Mhm.
And Danny was so anxious to do, he wanted to do, present this in May, and I said, look, we're a month away from the year end. Don't think of this as doing it at the year end, it's your first one, so take the time you need,
Mhm.
and then I believe moving forward, you'll do this quarterly again.
Yeah, and I think that we should actually update the financial policy to do that. It's just, from everything that I've read,
Yeah.
it's best practice to do it
Absolutely.
quarterly.
What are the
And we used
reasons?
to
I
do
know,
it.
I know there are some, and I know I've heard them before, but it's just,
I think it's just to know what you're, you wanna have eyes on it, you wanna make sure
right,
that
not
you
be surprised.
not be
at the end. Okay,
surprised,
right.
yeah.
Okay,
And then just, to have a good sense of like, are we on target to meet that revenue goal? Are we like spending more in certain departments? Just to keep eyes on it as the year
right,
progresses.
it's not as overwhelming to you either. to have
So
to
whether
do
it's
it all
good or
at
bad,
once, right, you know
don't be surprised.
where you are.
And I think
Okay.
we've all been very,
Okay.
I hear stories of other boards where
I
it's
can
just not. been
imagine
so-
what could happen.
And the other thing too, and you know this and you mentioned it, but Daniel, Lori and I have spent so many hours in the last 6 weeks cleaning up this year's records and moving things around, things where like the logo redesign was charged to like the capital equipment line. It's like, no, let's put it where it belongs.
Yeah.
Even if it creates an overage, and then we'll adjust it
Yeah.
for the next year. So this is brilliant stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Review of strategic goals.
Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me on this. This is like, this is the thing that I've been working on and it's
I'm
been.
gonna get some more water while
Yeah.
you're doing
I'm gonna
that.
get this up, yeah.
Do you want the green card up there?
The green card?
Yeah, from last year.
Oh, no, I don't need that. I'm not gonna go through it all. I'm not
Okay.
going through it all. This is a selective thing. Oh, it worked out perfect. Okay, cool. Okay, so what I wanted to do was, because we're doing the budget and you have a set of strategic goals. Typically, when you have strategic goals, some of the strategic goals have a dollar amount attached to them. So I wanted to kind of go through the strategic plan a little bit selectively, because there's things that I did leave out that don't necessarily have a real specific dollar amount. Like, you know, when you're thinking about like increased collaborations with the tri-community, that doesn't really have a specific dollar amount.
Right.
But I did want to kind of highlight some big things that
Right.
you're gonna see when we get to the budget. So that's kind of the purpose. I wanted to try to connect, you know, the strategic action plan with budget development. So again, that's the purpose of the conversation. Caution, this is not going to necessarily develop in a linear line because I guess looking at our plan, I connect things in a different way than, I like the way it's presented, but I'm just making different connections. And so it's not going to be exactly how the plan looks in its present
We're not
form.
always linear.
So the big thing that appears in the strategic action plan that we've already started on and that we have to plan for is the township hall renovation. So this appears in the commitment to excellence. We did get an estimate for construction. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a moving target because of construction
Yep.
cost increases, but the estimate is essentially between $225 a square foot and $275 a square foot on the high end. And that's at approximately, we're just under 3,000, we're like 2,997 square feet. So anticipate a project cost of somewhere between 675,000 and 825,000. Now that might be something that we can, play around with and they can work with, but I just wanted us to be prepared for what that number looks like. Now we do have a capital project fund and we do have a balance in there. I don't think it's really been actively utilized, or we haven't been consistently funding it, but we do have a fund balance in there of $49,000. And so that's money that is semi-restricted. It should be used for capital improvements. Doesn't have to be if we're really in a pinch, but we're not really in a pinch. But it kind of keeps money separate from the general fund. So it kind of allows us to plan for bigger things. So there is some money in there. Now, we have appropriated $90,000 this year to go into that fund. And in that budget amendment, I am recommending that we increase it by $110,000. So we have a clean $200,000 that we're appropriating into the capital project fund. So that would bring our total for this fiscal year in the capital project fund to $249,000. Now, given the number of what it's going to cost to renovate the building, what I'm proposing is that over the next 2 fiscal years, our goal be to appropriate out at least $200,000 into that capital project fund. So by the time that we get to the construction phase, which right now is proposed to be August 2023, we'll have approximately $649,000 in that capital project fund. Now, it's not going to take us all the way, right? Because it's going to be at least 675. However, we can supplement that with either an increased contribution every year, increased appropriation out. We can use ARPA funds, or we could, if we really needed to, dip into the general fund. But I think it gives us a really solid base where if we're not spending all the ARPA funds on it, we're really funding it, mostly by ourselves. But it shows the public that we really are planning for this.
Yes.
And then we're not just saying, oh, we have this money in the general fund, and we're gonna dip into that and take it out. No, we've set it aside. We've, made consistent contributions to it. We've been planning for it. So that's kind of my recommendation for the budget. And that's what you're gonna see in the budget proposal, that we've set aside $200,000 to be appropriated out into the capital project fund. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions before I move?
I do,
Yeah.
like, so with construction, I assume construction will take anywhere, I mean, potentially 12 months, who knows?
Yeah.
How, so those bills come in as they go, how does that work?
We would probably write a separate contract for that. So what we did for the website, and I have to look at the Alba Marsh contract, because I don't know how that's written. But what we did for the website was to break it into 3 phases. So there would be a phase 1, and at the end of phase 1, we would say if we were happy or satisfied with the work, and then we'd give a certain, amount. Then we'd have phase 2, and if we were happy with phase 2, then we would give an amount. And then by phase 3, we wouldn't give that final amount until we were fully satisfied with the
Okay.
renovation. So that's how I imagine that we
Right,
probably go about it, just so we're not paying as we go, that they have a goalpost. We're not gonna pay you anything until you satisfy this phase.
okay,
We really need to read that you found it?
We have the contract, yeah.
Okay,
I
'cause
just,
we couldn't find it right away,
and
because we've been paying them,
Alba Marsh.
yeah, sorry, Alba Marsh, and we're not real thrilled so far.
right,
And we have a meeting with them tomorrow.
okay,
They did resubmit a new plan, but
Okay.
again, it's a hand-drawn plan and whatever. But I hope that it's structured that way. I just have a fear it may not be, so we need to
Yeah,
bring that up if we maybe even wanna alter it.
we may.
do we have any estimates on the timeline for construction from like the actual beginning of the construction to the completion?
I think we do have some estimates, but I think that I think Alba Marsh would be hesitant to really
Material is.
materials and all that.
Mhm.
I think after tomorrow, we'll know a lot more, I'm hoping.
I think so.
Do you have any estimate yourself, just kind of?
I imagine it's gonna take at least a year.
Yeah, okay, I would, just for budget, like, well,
Yeah.
we have,
Well, and
make a
logistics,
payment
too.
every quarter, or
Yeah,
whatever, we really have more time to.
But they don't think it's gonna start for a year
Right,
because of supplies and things like that.
yeah, but it's a good point, because we might have 3 fiscal years to save for it, as opposed to
Mhm.
just 2.
It's actually a good thing.
Which is a good thing. So if it takes longer, it's actually in our favor. I mean, not terrible. I mean, it's you're weighing things.
Fiscally.
I'm not trying to make it go slow.
we want to all live to see the fruition of this.
Or we wanna be on the board still for a
Right.
minute.
What are the odds that any of this would be or when it's done? I don't mean to
Yeah, it'll
lie,
be-
I mean.
yeah,
it's
it'll be
painful.
interesting.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All or none.
Maybe all of us, who knows?
yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
Same.
take your vitamins,
Mhm.
me too. Okay, good. At some point, can either you or someone do a PR piece?
Yes,
Because I think I've talked to you about some criticism we've gotten,
yes.
which is definitely full of misinformation.
Uh-huh.
So it would be a good idea to get something out there.
I love that idea. No,
It's
we
actually
definitely-
something that's kind of, the show actually kind of put in the works and I started working on it. and then
Okay.
Things changed, so we can discuss.
And include some history,
Oh,
because
yeah,
one of
no,
the
I've looked
things,
up all the history, like what year we moved out of Douglas in here. When the furniture moved, how old the furniture is, because I know Bill
Good.
Wesley's been out there saying, we did a renovation 10 years ago. Well, yeah, they took a wall down.
yeah, okay,
That's all
good,
that
good, the history would be great, a concise or little
And I-
compressed version, yes.
The first years I lived here, the boardroom was over there. This was Dr.
Oh,
Wiley's
okay.
dentist office.
All right.
Oh,
now we-
really?
And when the
that-
police
okay.
moved in, they had this half too.
Okay.
Oh.
So the room was configured differently. The board kind of sat in front of the recycle bin. And the audience was there.
Okay.
There wasn't room for a lot of audience.
Oh,
And I think it was 2010-ish or so. that
Okay,
they
if you
got
did
think
it.
that. Okay, but he's
Hence.
come back to us and he's made. comments.
yes,
We're
yes.
spending all this money. We
Yes.
did a renovation 10 years ago.
Aha, we took a wall down, that's completely
Right.
different, yeah, right.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good.
But that's a really good point, and it's good if anyone hears that kind of talk,
And to
Yes.
highlight
to
how
share it
much
with us all.
more efficient the office will be,
Well,
which
and
saves
safer.
money, safer, yes. More, yeah, environmentally
Yeah.
conducive, but
Better
yeah,
care.
yes. To accommodate,
Go ahead, and
yeah.
yeah, the difference, the increase in work, you were just talking about in terms of permits and.
Right,
Yeah.
other stats, that's a good idea, that's.
Yeah.
No, I like that idea. Any other comments before I move on?
No, looks great.
Okay, so online social media presence, this isn't gonna answer everything right now, because I know that there's a lot more to it, and I will return to this. But we have initiated a website redesign, which is also in the strategic action plan. It's approximately gonna cost us about $20,000. I'm optimistic that that's gonna be a lower figure. Because we are moving along and the company is very happy with us and they are incredibly responsive. And I'm really happy with them so far.
Wonderful.
So I'm hoping that with all the material we're contributing to that to them and the speed at which they're working, we'll be able to bring down that cost. But we're really gonna only with the timetable, which is about 16 to 18 weeks to get it fully functional, we're probably gonna spend a third of that $20,000 budgeted this fiscal year. And then 2/3 next. So in the budget, we are planning to budget at least $15,000 to finish that project. So that's just something else to kind of keep in mind that, just based on where we are, it's not gonna be fully paid for this fiscal year.
Okay.
So then, this is something that I think we've covered a little bit before. So we do have a priority area of growth and development. And in there, the one thing that I did exclude was broadband, because I'm kind of just following the county very closely and developments in the state with that. And right now, there's no financial ask of us. So I'm just kind of following along the development. But in there are these other goals, which are adherence to master plan. Rural character is kind of lumped in with attainable and senior housing. I don't know why. It acknowledges it, but they're lumped together. So I just kind of pulled that apart. But you can see that rural character, attainable, and senior housing, economic development, they're all in that strategic action plan, and they also mirror the advisory committees that were created in planning. And the action plan actually acknowledges the creation of those committees.
It's great to see that, because I forgot about senior housing being tied up there. We
Yes.
had not a full, but we had an impromptu economic development committee yesterday. It was Becky Israel's, myself, and Mike Worth, and we spent over an hour talking about things. Over half our time was about senior housing, because that, again, that's a housing and an economic issue, and it was really an interesting conversation. So thanks for reminding me.
Oh, no worries.
I like that.
Yeah. So, oh shoot, what did I do? So the actions supporting growth and development, they overwhelmingly speak to research and developments of recommendation to improve the zoning ordinance. That's exactly what the PC advisory committees have done, and they've already submitted substantial recommendations to the zoning administrator. Additionally, the zoning administrator has identified general deficiencies in the zoning ordinance that unnecessarily complicate zoning decisions in her work. And they also make it difficult to adhere to the vision of the master plan. And ultimately, the recommendation that we are getting from our zoning administrator is that we should engage in a comprehensive revision of the present zoning ordinance. So that would be kind of killing two birds with one stone, that the process was initially to improve, rural character, or strengthen the zoning ordinance in terms of rural character, economic development, attainable senior housing. But the process also revealed that we do have these kind of general deficiencies, and this is the ultimate recommendation. So again, much progress has been made in terms of the actions identified in the plan, but we're actually taking a step further than the plan, which is something I wanted to highlight to you, that from those recommendations, we have an additional step, and now we have the opportunity to act on that additional step, which would be to pursue the comprehensive revision of the zoning ordinance. The approximate cost is between $60,000 and 90. Talking with Lene, I think 80 is more than sufficient to do everything that we need to do. And playing around with the budget, I'm recommending a funding source of ARPA. We probably could figure out a way to make it work with the general fund, but I think that this is a smart use of ARPA because it is this kind of soft infrastructure, and I think it kind of fits that bill. And it's a one-time thing that we would do, and it would benefit us for, decades to come. So that's the recommendation that,
But we also talked about maybe funding some of it from general fund because of the state marijuana revenue and license fees are allowed to be spent on ordinance type issues.
you could,
So maybe it's 60-20,
Is
yeah,
that restricted? How is that restricted, the marijuana?
well, it's actually, and it's not the revenue share, it's just the annual license fees.
Okay.
So we get 5,000 a
Right.
year from everyone. We're supposed to spend that money on, that's supposed to pay for operating and allowing to be here. So some of that is time of people in the office.
Right,
But if it was used for this, that would be kosher.
okay.
we did talk,
Pretty
At
restricted.
least it's just a way to
Yeah.
maybe not use up ARPA too fast. That's,
yeah, I did talk to Nick about this and he said they're not really restricted.
Okay.
That, they say that that's the
right, by
purpose,
definition
but
they are, but.
by definition they are, but there's nothing wrong with spending them on something else if we wanted to.
Okay.
You probably should keep track of them, but yeah, Nick said that there wouldn't be any kind of issue if we spent the licensing money on other things.
Okay.
They're not really restricted funds.
Which is good,
It was just good.
because we're not, right?
Yeah. Any questions about this project?
No,
Okay.
it's a long time coming. It'll save everybody lots of headaches going forward and avoid litigation and make things very clear.
Okay, so this is cost of living adjustment for staff. So there has been a proposal that the township consider a cost of living adjustment for staff compensation. This year, the US Consumer Product Index inflation is averaging 7.5%. Current budget includes an across the board COLA for staff at 7%. My salary is not included in that increase because I just got it, so I just excluded it from that. So just so you know, but I did want to get everyone's feedback on this because this is something that we've been talking about internally, but I don't think that the board has really got to contribute to this conversation. And so I wanted to give everyone the opportunity to kind of weigh in on this to kind of help me out.
No, and I've had conversations with everybody, and I brought some numbers too, so I'm glad to see it's a slide. There's actually COLA, cost of living is up to 8%. But
Said not me, not me.
it might have been 2 months ago, I'm pretty sure I did, but.
Anyway, it's irrelevant.
But cost of living was 8% last month. And yeah, and CPI, the consumer price index in March was 8.5%. Just underscoring that.
When generally, how do raises usually compare to the CPI index? Good question. Good question. Because to me, it seems high, too high, but
They usually match.
they do. So, okay,
And
It
last
is
year,
hard
we tried to follow CPI, but we were sort of inhibited by the number of staff. And last year, the increases were 2%.
and was that CPI? It's just 2%.
I think it was a little higher CPI.
The tell for me is when my teenagers are making $18 an hour. I'm pretty much unskilled labor, and you can get hired into McDonald's at, I think they're advertising, up to $20 an hour. It's like, okay, this is real. Up to, but I think that they come in at like 17, I start at 17, it's like crazy. There's some real tells out there of what's happening.
And there's been a lot of discussion on the Treasurers Association, listserv email and at the conference I was at. And I talked to a lot of municipalities, and it's quite a range for this year. It was everywhere from 4 to 12, they were doing 12 to, those are like for public safety, but still, that's a big increase.
Does this
is this just for staff? Is this for contracted staff? So for like Lene and the assessor as
Yes.
well? Okay, so this
It's
covers
for the
that.
contracted,
And then,
that's how we
no,
drafted the budget.
Not for Lene.
Oh, right, it was just, yeah, Kyle.
So it is for contracted work, it's a case by case basis, so
okay,
Kyle's contract came in with the ask for a 7% increase. And then each year, there's
That
an
makes sense.
additional,
okay. Because they're,
And I might be jumping ahead, but we did budget in a adjustment on all the people that get per diems.
Okay.
Felt those were kind of low too.
yeah, and that's not
Per
just,
diem.
Without, we
and then-
didn't do the percent without, we just,
and then,
someone was getting 50, well, they should get 75. Like the Harvard, and we had to add the Harvard 40 in there because we had to budget. So,
and what about board? Is that included or no?
so I increased so what we did was we left the salary for elected officials the same. But we did increase the per diem for trustees. I think we increased it to 125 from 100. And I'm gonna look into, what's all involved in that, but we did keep the elected official salaries the same.
Okay.
I think we're 75.
Oh, you're 75?
Yeah,
Then you might have gone up to,
did we get an increase that I don't know about? I thought we were
No, I think this
75.
is probably.
this is proposed.
Okay.
Okay, so the three officers, they're not included in this.
No.
Okay,
No, this is just staff.
But they, I mean, they could be. If,
what was that, like the thinking behind that why that's set aside, just because it's,
To me, I didn't see it in the strategic action plan. I haven't really heard any conversations about it. And it can be a controversial decision. Because you have to be transparent about it, and so it's just a question of, can we do it? Yeah, we can absolutely do it if you wanna do it, but I guess the question is like, do you wanna do it knowing that you're gonna have to justify it to the public and we don't know what their reaction's gonna be? So I think we just have to spend, if that's something we wanna do, we have to spend a little more time thinking about what we want that increase to be. Is it gonna follow is it gonna follow that kind of cost of living adjustment? Is it gonna be something different? Yeah, so I guess there's just, for me, there was a lot of open-ended questions associated with it, and I didn't have much precedence in making that decision.
but I do think everyone should think about that. I did suggest applying it to the members of the board that have a salary component. It just seemed to me fair and consistent to go across the board. We don't have to, we could, or as you said, it could be a different rate, but
do you
I
remember,
suggest we don't think
remember when we redid that?
the
When
first,
you were coming into office, and we
Right.
had to have your permission,
she lowered it.
yeah,
I lowered it.
yes,
So,
so if we do anything with your three, then the public gets 30 days to decide whether or not they want it, and if they don't, then we have to pursue a referendum or something like that. We knew that before, it just didn't happen.
I thought it was just part of the budget adoption.
No,
Yeah.
the stipends are just part, you can do that anytime
Okay.
for any reason.
Okay.
Now, something else,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we can do if you wanted, I don't know if this would help, is you three could also have stipends on top of your salary, and we can run that by Catherine again, but I think you can.
I don't see a need. to
No, I
change
Okay.
guess the only thing I'm thinking about is like does it make sense if you're doing everything else right now to just have that follow rather than
Well, you
let's
could
say
with
like,
all three, yeah.
yeah, 6 months or a year from now, we're like, okay, this really should be adjusted, I don't know.
And I can't remember, does it take effect? No, it takes effect immediately. I was thinking there was something that went on that wouldn't happen until the new term, but
There was something, but I don't really.
yeah, but yeah, we could consider all three. We could consider a stipend for the trustees.
Well,
There's
Yeah.
Oh.
there's lots we could talk about
you
doing,
mean it separate from a per diem
yes,
Probably
or
worth-
in, instead of.
or reflected in the amount
Yeah.
of the per diem, so.
Possibly, yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
If I remember correctly, some townships, depending on how active the people are, they can do both. They can give the trustees somewhat of a small salary based on how much time they're putting in, of course.
And sometimes municipalities have a compensation committee that votes
Yeah.
independently, so
Yeah.
we've never done that.
Yeah, I don't know if we wanna do that, that adds a lot of red tape. Yeah, I think that adds a lot
That
of
is-
red tape, a lot of red tape to interview processes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, those are things to consider.
But yeah, you two do a lot more than come to meetings and vote, so it's worth looking at and
Well, I'm not even,
researching
yeah.
all of, doing
Yeah.
those comparisons.
Yeah. I'm not even thinking about us per se, more about incentivizing people to run based on how hard it was to get people to run.
Right.
Of course, it was a controversial time,
Right.
but,
People wanna be appointed or not have to run against people.
yeah, but I mean, it just would be a way to get, good quality people. Right. Some of us are aging, seems faster than others.
Do you have a slide on that piece of the budget, where everything's listed or not? Like with the per diems and the salaries?
No, I don't have that, so like,
We've written our notes, but.
yeah,
And yeah, I'd like to see what our two cities are doing, maybe Lake Town, some of the local, maybe South Haven. Those are usually pretty easy to find. In terms of general raises, that's different. I don't mean
Oh,
the
yeah, 'cause
elected
we've done
officials,
the
I'm
other.
sorry. I'm, you know how my brain works.
Do you know the
For
city
stats.
answer?
You don't? Okay.
I don't know.
Do the
don't know.
economic and housing and those kind of committees, they don't get anything, do they, or?
Oh, the
No, I don't think
Advisory
so.
committee?
Yes.
No,
Oh,
but planning commission, the
That's
other
different,
commissions.
yeah.
Parks, Rec.
And we're
But to that point, I mean, it's really apples and oranges for the cities,
Why is that?
because they have so much money.
Well, okay,
Their treasurer, I think, is at 100,000 or close. Their manager's well over 100, and it's Douglas too. Lake Town, I can see a township, that's all I'm saying.
mhm. And they.
Taxable value and tax rates.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Douglas is doing a 5% COLA, and Cow Lake is doing one too. I wanna say it's like 6%.
I think they did 6,
Yeah, cause I was
which was a lot based on their history. But it reflects what we're saying about this economic standards and situations.
Cal Spa is also having issues with employee retention,
Oh,
and so they are doing that.
Except for one position.
Yeah. So they did do, they did some amendments to their benefit package. I think they're having trouble keeping up to with like the compensations in the private sector. I think there are a lot of challenges, but they are doing cost of living adjustment. And they did relook at their benefit package.
Does the Kalamazoo, like Chris Bernardi, does he get paid for that? And the Lake Harbor, do they have
Yeah,
it?
Harbor, we added this.
Okay, and does,
I
I
don't.
I don't think so,
Chris.
cause I thought I did that at one point. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Yeah, Fire and Cal Lake, no, they don't get per diems, but that's an interesting question.
Shouldn't they?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I don't know.
Because when we became an active voting member of Cal Lake, the board voted to get our
Right.
2 reps.
Okay.
Now, in the past, though, the manager has been the representative on Cal Lake, and that might explain why there was never a per diem.
Oh, okay, but maybe we need to,
I think
I think
that's a big job.
I think
Yeah,
so.
no, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that should be a.
And we only have
at
one
the
rep where everybody else
$75,000.
has 2, I think.
What's that?
We only have one rep and everybody
Right.
else has 2, so,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
I think Dean Kapinga was talking about how the county also adjusted their wages. And
okay.
intensely, I mean, they really liked everything because they were losing so many employees. People were like, no, why am I working here? I'm not making any money, I'm leaving.
Where was that happening?
At Allegheny County,
yeah.
the whole countywide, they
Oh,
adjusted
wow.
County
wages.
government.
And I think it was pretty significant. It was past due, but they've made some significant.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, cause why would we just go to McDonald's?
Right.
Exactly, well,
Yeah, lots of, and it doesn't set a minimum bar moving forward. I think we all agree this is sort of
Right.
an exceptional year.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm good with the 7%.
but we don't vote or anything today, right?
No,
Okay.
We're not taking any action.
We don't do that.
it's just
till
pointing out,
the-
it's in the draft
Yes.
budget,
No, it's
so
good
it'll
to
be in
know.
what we vote
Yeah.
on. And now, thanks to this conversation, there's some other alterations that
Yeah.
probably will get made, like Chris, Bernard,
Yeah, definitely.
which is great
Mhm.
stuff.
Ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, parks and trails. So this is a whole section of the strategic action plan. One of them is a millage. I'm skipping over that because that's kind of a parks internal decision if they want to go that direction. But there is a goal of expanding parks and trails in the township. I did want to highlight that the Parks Commission has been working on a plan to develop an approximately 20-acre site contiguous with the dog park. They've made a lot of progress on that. So the site would be developed with a community course that could be used for walking, running, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, and would be made available to the public schools as a cross-country course. The proposed budget, they gave us a budget of $80,000, but it included paving for a parking lot and other stuff. So we kind of trimmed that down to 50,000 because we thought that that really is probably closer cost to, closer to what it's gonna actually cost, and if they need to get grants, it gives them enough to leverage. And they've never gotten this kind of money before,
Right.
and we kind of want to see what they're gonna do with it. I have a ton of faith in them, but they have never gotten a chunk of change like this before.
Mhm.
And they've also
so
never asked. We've been pushing.
they have also
and
not
the-
asked.
The new members, it's like, you should be asking for stuff. You won't get it all probably, but
Right,
Yeah,
we
Start
lit the
dreaming.
fire.
yeah,
And, it came back and it was like, whoa, okay, well, we knew it'd be a blaze, and then we're gonna contain it, so.
now in the draft budget that we're gonna review today, we are funding it through general operating revenue.
Mhm.
However, this could also be a project that you might want to consider an ARPA fund. ARPA as a funding source. So I just kind of threw it out there that, we were able to give them what they asked for with using operating revenue, general operating revenue, but it could also be an ARPA project.
When will they potentially start on this actual project?
So they have gone through the bidding process. They've identified a engineering firm that will develop the plan for them, which is Prine and Newhoff. Dana was not involved in that decision. He recused himself.
yeah.
And now they are presently working on a site walk with the person who's going to develop the plan for them. So that's the correspondence that's going back and forth, but I don't think it'll take that long to develop a plan. And then from there, I imagine it would be done for like next spring,
Wow,
summer.
what's the capacity for parking currently?
It's a good question. It's there's a decent amount of parking. I mean, it's not set up for like an event.
Right.
By any means, and I think the parking is, so when you go into the dog park, you can make a left and there's some parking spots there, and Stacy, you probably have a better idea of what the parking capacity is. But there are other places that you could park.
It's also
not-
street park,
There's also street
Yeah.
parking.
it's kind of a.
So they,
Yeah, it's not a
they
big-
still couldn't even, could they potentially do a small meet where they just bring in one bus or two buses or something?
They potentially could,
That would
with given the
be
street
great.
parking, because it is a dead end road on 134th. And there's a lot of places to just kind of like, it's not.
Well, sometimes buses drop off and then they go park somewhere else and come back
Mhm.
too, so, okay.
Yeah, they could feasibly do that, yeah.
And then what about maintenance? How much maintenance is associated with this and what's the
That's another good question, and we don't really know the answer to that, and that's something that, that's another reason why we didn't give them the full $80,000, because we do wanna have a better understanding of what the ongoing maintenance costs are, because it's probably not wise to continue to fund parks for big expansion projects without that maintenance component, so I think that that's gonna be something that Parks needs to talk about in terms of maybe looking for a millage, or, kind of scaling back their plans for continued park development.
How much trail will be there? Like, is it a mile? Is it?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's still up in the air, because they do have a proposal for multiple trails. Like they have like a ring trail and a canopy trail, and I don't think anything has been firm, like nothing has been defined like this is gonna be the trail. But I do know that they are gonna be consulting with the cross-country coach, so
Right.
the trail length is gonna be sufficient to hold meets and practices.
But that's not part of this.
But
plan.
that's not part of necessarily.
They
part of the
wanted
plan.
it to be, and we sort of, that's long term, because that takes buy-in from the school board, and the district, and let's have a track that anyone can use,
Right.
including the team to practice on.
Mhm.
But, like some of the things we heard from the coach and we're not envisioning that anytime too soon. And they understand that, right?
Yeah, the idea is that we're developing a community course for the community to run on, to walk on, to hike, to snowshoe, to cross-country ski. However, it could also be opened up to the public schools if they wanted to practice there. I think the meets, again, it's kind of a long-term vision. But we want to make sure that whatever is constructed is sufficient for when we.
Laying
That it's
the
long enough
groundwork,
that it
right, like we're
qualifies
not gonna
it.
have to undo something, right, and
Right.
spend,
Oh, we
okay,
have to
that's,
make it bigger
thank
now.
you.
Yeah.
That, and we own that 20 acres?
We own that 20 acres.
Wow,
Right.
wonderful.
And there's also, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a little flag piece that comes out to 63rd. So there's also the idea that this might be a potential project that we work with Saugatuck City in the future, because there is a possibility of connecting our property with their airport property. So we could have like some sort of like nice crosswalk there. Again, that's a long-term thing, but the idea is if we're developing something for outdoor recreation, we would hope that we could communicate that with the city, and they may also, when they get to the point of developing that property, develop something that is cohesive or harmonious with what the piece that we've done.
Okay.
Oh.
So baby Percy's in the rain.
Is this his first
It's
rain?
okay.
Oh, hey,
It's 53 degrees, I think he's fine.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move on?
I'm ready,
I think so.
Okay. So trail expansion, rural character, business development, these don't necessarily go together, right?
Are you linking these?
But all of these are goals in the strategic action plan. There is an expressed desire for trail expansion. It says that in the strategic action plan, but presently we have no adequate funding source for purchasing land, conservation easements to create new or connect existing trail systems. We do have an active community group that have renamed themselves, I forget, Riverwood Group. That's the Tri-Community Trail Group. So we do have plans for, an extensive trail system that would connect the state park to the New Richmond Swing Bridge Park. But we don't have a funding source to do that, although that's something that we have an interest in. There is a desire to preserve the rural character. There's an acknowledgement by the Rural Character Committee that zoning changes and updates can't accomplish this alone. But we don't have a dedicated funding source to accomplish that goal. There is a desire to encourage business development, especially in agriculturally related business in our agricultural areas. Unfortunately, we do, like other areas, have significant developmental pressure. that might take land out of agricultural use permanently. So we don't really have a clear strategy on how to preserve our agricultural land and to encourage the development of agricultural related businesses going forward. So again, all kind of mixed together, right? So how can these concerns be addressed, which seem to be unrelated to each other or somewhat unrelated to each other? So recently I had a guest speaker from the east side of the state, Barry Lonick, who works with townships specifically. He's also worked with the county, he's worked with the city of Ann Arbor in establishing what are called conservation commissions. So a conservation commission is a commission that essentially ranks properties and determines whether or not it is wise to invest in either the purchase of that property for preservation conservation, the purchase of conservation easements or development rights. So conservation easements and development rights are a little separate because what you're doing is you're not buying the property, you're buying the right to develop the property from the property owner. So they still get to own the property and operate it within certain limits, but the township now owns those development rights, and I can kind of go into that in a little bit. So what most of these conservation commissions have in other townships is a 0.5 millage. So to give you an idea of what that would be, it would raise approximately $195,000 per year if your house was valued at, let's say on the market, the open market, right? If your house cost approximately $400,000, that means that it'd be about $100 added to your tax bill every year. That's what it would look like for $500,000. So the millage would fund the purchasing of land for conservation, the purchasing of conservation easements for trail creation, purchasing of development rights from farmland, and it would also pay for staff or consulting necessary to facilitate a conservation commission. So we wouldn't have to rely on township staff to do this because the millage could fund a kind of an environmental consultant who specializes in this to run that commission. I'm approximating the cost of getting that off the ground at $10,000. Again, this would kind of, like I talked about before, that we've been spending money on consulting services. So I just kind of wanted to connect the two, that this might be, I'm not saying that we have to do it, it's a complicated process that actually would have to get off the ground by an independent community group. So it's not really something that we could initiate ourselves, but it would probably have an initial cost of $10,000. Future costs would be funded through the dedicated millage. So the idea is that we could have a funding source for trail creation. We could have a funding source for conservation. And then the real interesting thing for farmland is that once you buy the development rights, it reduces the value of the land significantly. And so it opens up the opportunity for young people who are interested in getting into farming to buy that property at a reduced cost and being able to continue to use that land for farm or agricultural related activities, but without having to, but without the opportunity to sell it to a developer. So that's how I kind of connected all those things, as this might be an action that could satisfy those goals that I had laid out before. So I just kind of testing the waters and seeing what your reactions are to this, because it is a little future thinking. It's coming from the east side of the state, so we'd be kind of new in that, but we do see Allegan County as a conservation district. You do see conservation efforts in Ottawa County, but it could spark something interesting. And our environmental consultant who came to speak said that typically for every dollar that is raised by taxes, they're able to leverage $5 additional. So $200,000, you could essentially leverage an additional $1 million through grants. So something to kind of think about. I know it's a lot.
I know we've talked about it, but connecting all those dots is really great. Is there a way to do, because it does feel overwhelming to me, and we are doing so many really important things, and we have done so much from here to here, wow, when you look back at the things we've changed and done, and not we, the board, but also, you know, the planning commission and the committees and holy crap, like a
Yeah.
lot has happened in the last few years. Is there a way to do part of that at all? Because, you know, we have this building, like Parks got this big, like they're coming up like this
Yeah.
too, you know,
Mhm.
so it's like we have a lot of things that are just like full speed ahead. The website and whatever, which is all great. But is there a way to do just part of that? Like, hey, let's kind of just test this out. Like, could we say, hey, we're gonna pay consultant just to do some of these, what do you call it, the rights on the property? So that's just basically saying that this farmland is gonna be farmland for the rest of eternity, right?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's an interesting question. There's a lot of things that we could do other than going for the full mill. In terms of like the buying of development rights, we really need the millage to do it,
Okay.
but you could pave the way. So something that the consultant told us was that you typically want to put this kind of millage on a ballot for a big election year. So if you wanted to do it, it's either this November or you wait 2 years,
Mhm.
which may not be bad to wait 2 years, because then you can have more time to digest it. The millage that was passed in the city of Ann Arbor, there was a caveat in there that said that up to 2/3 of the funds raised could be spent outside of the city limits. So there might be an opportunity to speak to the city of Saugatuck and the city of Douglas to get them on board with a millage too, to kind of look at our community as, you know, bigger picture and say, well, maybe you can have a millage and you can have a millage and we will have a millage and we will all contribute to this. Some of the land might be conserved in the city, some of it might be conserved in the township. So that might be a way that we go when we just say, okay, we're gonna say 2 years from now, and we're gonna work on all the steps that need to happen to get to that millage. So that might be a way we go, or we might talk to Parks and say, hey, Parks, do you wanna have some sort of conservation component if you're going for a millage? The consultant kind of they kind of said that that wasn't a great way to go because there's specific requirements with conservation that don't necessarily align with park development, but it is an option. So those are some of the options. You can't begin like buying land or buying development rights without the money, without the millage, but you can start laying the groundwork for establishing the commission and putting the millage on the ballot now.
Okay. So another, like, and just tell me if this is not even feasible, but a way to start smaller with this, there's so much
Yeah,
support in the community for these type of concepts. I mean, so many people that we could bring on board to help that are really knowledgeable and fantastic. But could we start earmarking money now, just out of whatever, or, you know, like a capital fund,
yeah,
and say, we're gonna, you know, here's our goal over the next 3 years to, you know, put this money in here, and here's 6 parcels we've, you know, identified as potentially ones that we'd want to buy. You know, like right now, they might not be available then, or, but these types of lands and these types of costs, you know, to like say, we are making some progress in this area, and we do want to acquire land that can be used for trails, recreation, or just conserved. I don't know, like, are there ways to do it a little smaller, or?
you could. Okay, so yeah, so what we would do, and this
Maybe
is,
nobody has any interest in what I'm babbling about, but.
yeah, no, you could. So what we would need to do is you need to pass, and this is part of this, what you'd have to do for this anyway. The township has to pass an ordinance that says that they have the right to purchase land for conservation and they have the ability to purchase the development rights from agricultural land. So you pass that ordinance, and then we could earmark or set aside in a special semi-restricted fund money for conservation. I don't know how much. It would probably be, you know, not enough, but it could be related to, I mean, like, you know, I know the Tri-Community Trail Group are trying to put together this connected trail system. And sometimes they have a property owner they're trying to buy the, you know, development rights from, and it might be like $10,000 or $5,000 to buy those rights. So there might be smaller projects we could engage in like that and have the money set aside. As a kind of testing the waters.
Mhm.
So that's how I would imagine it working that way.
Right, or
And-
even property owners that might sell at a discounted rate, because they want to support this. You know, they want to have a legacy with the township and, I don't know.
Yeah, you could, I mean, you could go that way, it would be smaller scale, I guess I'm on my mind, I'm thinking bigger scale.
Right.
But it
And I
could be
like-
on all sorts of scales, yeah.
No, and the committee got very excited with this presentation.
Yeah.
There was sort of this feeling of, all right, we had to do this in November because it's the governor's race and big turnout. I'm feeling more now, like 24 makes more sense than 2 years, especially because I think involving the two cities, because they're in the tri-community master plan with us. It just seems so in step to go that route. And my memory of the map that the guy showed of Ann Arbor, I think half of the areas, the properties that they bought the development rights for were outside of Ann Arbor. It created a green belt to like protect them. So, you know, because at first it sounded weird, like, why would you buy development rights in a
Different
adjoining
town.
community? Well, that's what they did.
That's
I
what we
would
did.
think maybe the two cities would like that idea.
Like the state park, I consider that like the town, in the township, you know, it's ours.
But anyway, just think, well, you should do it anyway. You don't need
But
our
are
help.
there ways, like if we waited 2 years to put it on, which I would lean towards, are there ways to do some of those small things in the meantime to keep that momentum going for everybody? There's so much momentum and interest. I guess I'd like to explore that.
Yeah, I think I would have to talk to the tri-community trail master plan group. Because they would have a better idea, because they're really like boots on the ground, they have the big picture, but they're also like, you know, small scale thinking like how, you know, this property owner connecting with this property owner and connecting that trail. And so there might be some opportunities there. But I don't think it would raise the kind of like a bigger purchase. So like the dunes rides or something like that.
Right,
That would be like way out of
right.
but then also keep in mind, like, we're in a kind of a unique situation because a lot of some of the bigger undeveloped properties are eligible for DNR grants, which would fund 75% of the purchase price. So, and we're just kind of lucky in that way. I mean, they're very expensive, but we do have quite a few undeveloped properties that are eligible for those DNR grants.
Did you say that if we engage the consultant, that he would do the property analyses of which ones?
Yeah, there's a whole, it's very, you know, technical and but it's all developed out. I mean, he's been doing this since the
Right.
80s, and so he's got a process. He's got like a selection criteria that the commission goes through and, you know, in ranking properties for conservation. Yeah, it's really well developed, which is kind of the exciting part, that we're kind of benefiting from decades of work. He also has all of these marketing materials, you know, all ready to go that kind of explain the benefits of this, not just in terms of conservation, but economic benefits to public health. He has all of those statistics, and he's kind of worked with like the naysayers, and so we could really benefit from all of that. We wouldn't be starting from square one. We would be working off of a model that's been successful in other townships on the east side.
So he would do that property analysis within the 10,000, do you think?
No,
That would,
when you get to that stage, that's the commission stage. So all the stuff that you know, all that
you
technical
need the
stuff.
commission for that.
You need the commission for that, and then the pay for the consultant would come from the millage itself. And, you know, Barry said that there are periods of time where the commission is very active, and there are periods of time where the commission is not very active. And there kind of comes a point too where you achieve your goals, and then, you know, there's not necessarily a continued need for the millage. So it is kind of a long-term plan, but there is kind of an endpoint in sight if the community wanted that it doesn't have to be a millage forever and ever and ever. It's kind of a millage until you feel like you've achieved your conservation goals.
So would the cities be interested because then they could purchase outside of the city? Because it doesn't seem like they have anything that can be developed that way, or that can be,
No,
Not much.
so why would they be interested in doing it? That's my question.
but this is a good question. So let's say that Pine Trail Camp came for sale, or let's say the Dunes rides came for sale. Precedent says that the city stepped up and bought that property and then annexed it from the township. And I don't know how, I mean, I imagine it was a lot of private donors, but I imagine they shelled out quite a bit of cash too. So it's not, history has shown that the city has purchased property in another jurisdiction and then following that purchase annexed the property, so now it's become part of the city, but they've done it before. It might, they might do it again. Maybe it's wise for them to have an actual, funding plan if they, thinking of that in the future.
But Ann Arbor didn't do any annexation, or did they?
I think that they did do some annexation. Yeah.
But it creates that green belt, and
Okay.
they wanted the protection for the city.
Yeah.
For lack of a better.
So that might be, but that's not a guarantee that they're gonna be, I can tell that to them and they might, tell me to go
Well,
scratch, but I don't
Like
know.
the dunes
I don't know.
tours, we could have a entrance to the state park through there too, and that would benefit everybody around here, I would think, and not having to go all the way out there to hike and stuff, so.
So it's an idea that I kind of wanted to make everyone aware of and kind of just expose you to it that, this could be something that we could do, and I think it checks a lot of the boxes in, kind of creative way. That, we do have a lot of agricultural land and there will be continued pressure for, subdivision development. Like Holland Charter Township put a moratorium on subdivisions in agricultural areas. Or areas that are not zoned high density because they just have so much of it. And there's a fear that maybe that's gonna happen to us.
Yeah.
And then it really, it eliminates agricultural land, you can't have future businesses. Even some of the restaurants in town, I mean, they really benefit from having local farmers.
Yes, yeah.
So I think it's an interesting way of addressing a lot of the goals that we have, but it is a big thing, so it is something that I know I wanted to present to you early enough to digest. And it's not so much of an initial, you can see it's not gonna be a huge budget thing, but it is gonna be a kind of going to the public and saying,
Yeah.
do you want this?
It's kind of exciting.
Kind of exciting. And we could be the first one on the west side to have something like this, which is also kind of cool for us. Any other questions about this?
You recorded that presentation, right?
It's recorded, it's only the audio, but I did record the presentation. I do have Barry's slides, so I can share all of that with you.
Is the audio where on YouTube, or how do you access that?
It's on our Otter AI on our dictation service. So I'm just gonna email it, but I'm probably going to post it on Facebook and then put the audio link on the website too, so the public kind of is aware of it. But I meant to record it on Zoom, but the recordings, or when you open Zoom, the meetings automatically record. And I think that instead of recording, I unrecorded.
Oh.
I think that's what happened, but thank goodness the dictation service did record it. So we have the audio, just not the visual. Okay, so this is another kind of non-linear. Connecting the dots. So strategic action plan identifies the following goals for the township. We have business development, attracting new businesses through communication initiatives and promoting township assets. This is just coming from the action plan. Improve online social presence. Again, we're kind of coming back to that. Improve waste hauling recycling services. Again, this seems really random, right? That's okay. Increase professional staff, I should say professional staff, not profession staff. effectively leveraging operating millage, because you did have an increase in your operating millage. And so it is in your action plan to make sure that you're effectively leveraging that operating millage. So these are goals, they seem unrelated right now, that's okay. Now I also kind of see the township facing specific challenges in accomplishing these goals. One of them is the township wants to encourage business development, but needs to promote itself in such a way that it attracts businesses that enhance the local community and cohere with the community's values. I think we've started to see some businesses come in that we don't necessarily like, or the public has a real visceral reaction to. So if we're promoting ourselves for business development, we want the right kind of businesses that really do enhance our economy and don't kind of mesh with, or aren't against our values. So I think that that's a challenge. Like, how do you promote yourself without opening the floodgates to any kind of development? Online social presence. So the township should effectively leverage its online presence, but we need to determine the kind of content we want to share and how do we represent ourselves. I think that's a big question, because we don't want to just publish anything and everything, because there's not really a clear strategy there. So I struggle with that. And then I think that at this point, we don't really have such a defined platform. I think intuitively we understand how our goals connect, but we haven't really articulated that kind of connecting thread through everything that we're doing. So we have, really great ongoing and future projects, but we lack a defined platform that can connect the various goals and accomplishment in a unified message. So I'm putting this word out, nature-rich community. So I think what we might consider, and this is going to get to a second part, what we might consider is unifying the various activities of the township under a sustainability platform. And another word for sustainability that's kind of out there for municipalities is nature-rich community. And the idea of sustainability, right, is it encompasses multiple areas. So it's conservation and preservation, it's economics, it's financial responsibility, it's equity, which I think all speak to our values, and it's public health, physical and mental. And one thing, or one way we might approach, kind of satisfying all those challenges is maybe pursuing a relationship with the Outdoor Discovery Center. So we have an ongoing relationship with them. We've talked to them many times. They kind of have an understanding of who we are. And I did sit down with them, and this is how I got in trouble the last time. I sat down with the Discovery Center just for a conversation, and they sent me a proposal. That's the same thing that happened this time. I sat down with them for a conversation, and what they do, they send me a proposal, which I guess is what they do, right? But I just kind of told them about,
We did ask for the first time. I think.
not specifically. But anyway, that's what happened. So I don't get in trouble this time. So they sent us a proposal of how we might go about addressing some of the challenges that we have, and kind of being able to satisfy some of these goals we have, in this idea of kind of developing a sustainability, nature-rich community platform. So what they're proposing in their contract is they would serve as an advisory role, and the specific contract right in front of you. So they kind of laying out, so they would serve as an advisory role for the township hall renovation. So they would kind of review they would review the building as it is, they would review the site as it is, they would make recommendations, they would be involved in the renovation, making recommendations in terms of, anything that would fit that sustainability model. Maybe it be lights, maybe it be the furnace, or things like that, insulation. So again, it's sustainable, it's environmentally friendly, it's also economically minded. What are things that we could do to save money over time? They would help us with single hauler benefits. So they would be able to develop a communications and marketing strategy for us, and be able to present that information, like how much money do you save on roads because you only have one hauler going through? You know, all that kind of that piece that I think that right now I'm struggling with. I have the kind of cost savings in mind, but I think they can put it in a bigger context for us. I've talked with Lori about improvements to the cemetery. At Douglas Cemetery, we have this huge area of land that will not be developed for decades, and it's all grass that we water and that Glenn mows. That could be, you know, that we could plant wildflowers, we could plant wild grasses, we could create like a prairie, you know, environment that we don't have to maintain, that looks nice, that's environmentally friendly, that we're saving money on watering and we're saving money on maintenance. So that's like an idea. They would help us with state and federal accreditation. So we do things that are sustainable, but we don't ever get credit for them. So they would help us mark the things that we're doing and identify specific accreditations that we could apply for and get on like state lists and federal lists, like the Michigan Green Communities, which they have like Ann Arbor and Holland on their list under gold members. You know, that's a way of really kind of elevating us and making us more visible and getting credit for the things that we're actually doing. And then to be included in a list like that, I think is really big. Soul Smart is a federal designation or a national designation related to being a solar friendly community. They would help us with sustainability planning, what we could be doing, benchmarks, recording our accomplishments, all of that. They could play an advisory role in treating aquatic invasive species. This is really coming up in the Harbor Authority. And I'm starting to hear from residents along the river about, you know, individuals treating it on their own with maybe things that they should be putting in the water. So I think this might become more of a hot button thing, but they could help us in that process. And they might actually serve in an advisory role designating the Kalamazoo River as a water trail, which is something Parks has been talking about. So they could help in all these areas. And then we can use those accomplishments as the basis for our social media platform. So impact on the budget, right? Because that sounds like a lot. The proposed contract is for an annual retainer. They would dedicate 8 hours a month to us for $750 a month or $9,000 a year. Some of the cost of the contract could be included as an expenditure for this fiscal year. It doesn't have to, but it could be. It would be an ongoing expenditure funded through the operations revenue. We could consider in the short term ARPA funds, but this would really, I'm kind of thinking of this in, you know, because we talked about adding professional staff, and I just don't, at this point, I don't really specifically need another person in the building, but I do need some support in terms of more specialty items. And I think this kind of satisfies it, that I can focus more on, you know, daily operations, kind of big picture thinking, but then I can bring in the experts who know what they're doing, who've done it before, to kind of satisfy these other goals and really, you know, I think take us to another level.
I
So,
really like that idea, Daniel.
Yeah, I do too.
They've proven that they have a service to offer us that we can, especially now that we're looking ahead, that I think we should consider doing this one.
They're such a great resource
Yeah.
and they're local
Yeah.
and they have a desire to work with us. And I think that's a really good price point, and it doesn't lock us into anything.
no, we
No.
can
So
Yeah.
if
cancel
we
that.
say, hey, you
So
know
if we
what,
have-
yeah, this
yeah.
is not going the way we want, this is not what we were
Yeah.
expecting from you, we're not getting some of the things we wanted, we could. I think it's a really low risk
Yeah.
improvement to make.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
So would you have to put it on our agenda and vote on it?
Oh, yeah,
then?
anything
So
involving
we can do
funds.
this as soon as the next meeting, right?
You can do it as soon as the next meeting if you'd like.
I would like to myself, so.
Yeah, and it's not an employee, there's no benefits attached, there's no, you know,
Right,
the
right.
rate, you know, it's a you know, professional
though
consultants.
This isn't, it's in my mind sort of related to the previous topic. This keeps that
Yes.
momentum going
Yes.
for the people that are you know, the John Vanderbeeks and his clan,
Yes.
Yeah.
his team, you know, it shows that we are doing some really environmentally friendly things and, yes, I think it's smart.
And potentially saving money.
And potentially saving money, because there's the financial responsibility
Right.
component to sustainability.
Yes.
So I think that it also fits in like with the strategic action plan and kind of like the values of this board.
Mhm.
So we can highlight that, but yeah, I think it hits on everything, like nature, equity, financial responsibility. And they can really help us, that's the thing that we talked about in terms of helping us with messaging and branding. To kind of bring
Mhm.
everything together and then get credit for the things that we're doing and get put on these kind of, get national, state, accreditations. Again, that's something that we advertise outside of our community to, business developers or, residents who might be looking for, people who might be looking to live here. So I think it's a great opportunity to really expand the visibility of the community in a positive way that tells everybody like what we're about.
Mhm.
Have you had an opportunity to go out there, to see what they're doing out there at the
Oh, yeah,
ODC?
I was at one of the,
You were
Oh,
at the
we're-
last
okay,
summer of the
yeah.
meeting,
right, on that board, but it was so great.
Right, that was a great
Okay,
meeting.
I didn't know if everybody- if
I
anyone
haven't
had-
been there in
I
probably 2
told you,
years, so
take
when the
the
kids are,
there.
we used to go weekly, and I swear, you'd be like, there's something new every
Yeah,
time.
Every time, yeah.
They're doing stuff, the single hauler, them kind of taking, not the lead, but being heavily involved with the advisory role on that, that's so attractive.
Very
to me,
appealing.
because that's a very
Yeah.
overwhelming
Yeah.
topic, and
Mhm.
any support that we can get with that,
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I hear recently that, is there a grade school or somebody that's actually gonna be moving there, or?
They have a.
Yeah.
They have little.
They
They have their
there.
little school, but I thought it was.
A whole school.
Like a black.
No, I think
river
that's
something.
right.
Or like a grade
Yeah.
school, that's mostly preschool, correct? Cause I've had
It is.
neighbors that went there for, and they,
It's
Yeah,
Hamilton.
they run
Boy.
two of those.
boy, did I get an education on everything creepy crawly.
Uh,
Really, they're wonderful,
Yes.
but I just wondered, I don't know why, I don't know if I read it somewhere or.
They're always doing something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like it.
yep.
And I like that we're
That's
not committed into perpetuity,
Yeah.
because you know what the economy does, it does this,
Exactly, yeah,
so
that's, I think that's,
beautiful.
and I think that's it for the presentation. That's kind of the highlights of some of the things in the
Yeah.
budget, and I guess we can turn to the budget now.
Mhm.
Dot connecting has been great. Think you give us a little more credit than we deserve for.
But you know, I
how we
always
can
liked
follow.
connecting
No, it was
the
good.
dots,
It's
you
good.
know, I don't know why. Yes, great.
Okay.
So, when is lunch coming?
I know we should hire, yeah.
I know, I
We're
meant
only
to
here
do
till
that, I
one,
forgot.
Daniel.
Wow, that's a lot, yeah, they were an hour and a half into it.
Cancel the special assessment meeting again, and I have to eat something, so.
I know. And the budget, well, I mean, we can start going through the budget or hit the highlights.
Okay,
And I did, because the way that the budget prints out, until I create the narrative, it runs all the departments together. So what I did was this fun guide.
oh, okay.
So it tells you what number,
Oh, that's.
what department correlates to each number.
I printed it with all the breaks.
Is that the budget or what we worked?
This is our requested budget for 23.
Oh,
I
really?
just moved the columns around, so, because it was too wide, so it would print here first, but it mirrors our revenue and expenditure.
Oh, I don't know why Mike, I didn't figure out how to do that.
I mean, we're learning more about these today.
Yeah, you're gonna have to show me that.
And although mine also ran any fund even with zero in it, but at least it is broken down, so.
So I think the biggest thing that we might want to talk about in revenue is the current property tax. And underneath is the Headley rollback.
That's the 407,000. That's my.
Yeah, so right now our millage is set at 1 mil, but we can leverage 1.0281. That would increase the budget by about $11,000. So I think it's ended up being just like a few dollars for each property.
And that's set by the county equalization.
Mhm.
And we're suggesting maybe doing that because on the other side with cemetery and the other ones, they lowered our maximum. So that's how they work, so.
So it might be something to consider. Do we wanna? Yeah, I don't think we have to do anything. I have to check on what actions required, but do we wanna go for the maximum that we're allowed with? I think it's just allowed at this point.
No, but don't we vote on the L 4029 every year, the board? Or do you guys just sign it? Because I know we've had some confusion. We have to get this back to the county fairly soon.
And I can have a discussion with MTA about it.
Okay.
But I just kind of wanted to gauge your reactions. Do we want to keep it at 1 mil or do we want to push it for that 0.0281 increase, which is about $11,000?
Share with the other ones, the lower rate.
So the road maintenance, which is up this year, is being lowered from presently, let's see, 0.9781 to 0.8998. And cemetery is being rolled back from, let's see, is it original millage, 0.2240 to 0.2190. So there's decreases there.
And in the other road. We have
And in
two.
the other
We
road
have
too,
two.
from
Mhm.
0.9967 to 0.9748. Now, those are all restricted funds.
Right.
So it doesn't affect our, operating revenue for the general fund.
I think that you guys, since you're so involved in the budget, just make your recommendation and we'll
Yeah.
take action on it,
Okay.
like. Do what makes sense, it sounds like there's a need to it, and you could justify it either way, but.
And remind me, Dan, when are we voting on the roads maintenance?
I
August?
think it's November,
It is
it
so
expires
it's
in
right
December,
before the winter bill, so.
Yeah.
okay.
which is a good ballot to be on, it's a good election to be on the
Right.
ballot.
And roads always pass this.
Yeah.
There's never any questions asked.
Does the rollback ever end?
No.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always roll back.
I think it could end eventually if, just to be partisan for a moment, I mean, if Democrats ever took over the state legislature, we had a whole presentation of MMTA on the history of the rollback. And, and it's just, it was needed at the time, the state was in crisis. The state now has more money than they know what to do with. And again, that won't last forever,
No,
but do you balance the state budget on the backs of the local communities? So I predict in time it'll end, but it could be 10 years from now. And it's such a headache.
No kidding.
Legitimately, just operationally, it's awful.
I wish I had a better narrative for you guys right now. But I don't. We were a little somewhat, this is hard to say, because I think on one hand, it feels like a big increase from previous years to revenue related to permitting. But we were just so off in how much we're actually generating. And we did do the revision to the fee schedule. And based on even just last year, what the revenue was related to building permits, that's the number we went on. We came up with, and this is even lower than what it would have been with the revision to the fee schedule for something like building permits. We moved up, last year we budgeted 40,000. For this fiscal year, we wanted to budget 102,000, which seems like a massive jump. Right now, we're at 93,000 plus, and that's not with, and we're not seeing any increased money coming in or revenue coming in from the revision to the fee schedule that we did. So
Yeah.
based on,
That's just hitting.
and that's just, yeah, so based on the permits that we processed the previous year, which were less than the number of permits we processed this year, with taking into account what it would have been with the increases to the fee schedule, this is a somewhat conservative number.
This year, all the different permits are running between 150 and over 200% above the budget number.
Was that COVID though, because nobody was doing much, and I
This
mean,
is
is that
permitting,
permitting?
building,
Yeah.
renovations.
Right, well,
Right,
yeah,
still a
Yeah.
valid question.
Oh, you mean not going away?
well, I
I'm sorry, I
mean,
misunderstood.
Know why the increase is
well,
now.
because nobody was doing anything for so
Right.
long, right?
Right.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I got you,
it wasn't
bro.
that low the year before.
No, it
And it
seems
won't
to,
grow
yeah.
every year, but
Yeah.
it's gonna grow for a bit. And also on the revenue side, we're gonna know later this week or next week, we may have under budgeted again for the state revenue share. We're gonna get another report from them.
Okay.
We wanted to go
Right.
with what we knew. So you've pointed it out, but I don't have any doubt that this new general fund revenue of almost 1.4 million will be hit. It could even, we could beat it again.
It's a good problem.
It is a good problem. I'm trying to think, so again, a lot of this is just, we adjusted, based on what we think that I think we hit all the highlights for the revenue, although ARPA's not included because we weren't sure if we are gonna get ARPA this year,
Mhm.
but we probably should add it. An ARPA line of $175,000.
Well, that's not general fund,
Well, it would be coming into.
if we move it.
If we, oh, I guess you're right, you're
ARPA's in
right.
the budget.
Yeah, you're right. So it wouldn't be
At the
included here.
175, and we're gonna get the second payment of 175 very soon too.
Yeah,
So we'll have 350 to consider.
and then I guess the other thing, and it's hard, I apologize that this is just not more, it's not more polished at this point. It will be for June. But if you look down in revenue, I think it's like one of the last few lines, you'll see transfer. Is it transfer from fund balance, or is it?
Yeah, it's too bad the divider's not there.
Yeah, the dividers aren't there.
Well, it's 698,000, if that helps you.
Yeah,
You go down the third, this
Mhm.
698, transfer from fund balance.
so really, actually, that number is wrong. It should be appropriation transfers in. Or is it transfer from? No, it's transfer from, yeah, sorry. So it's, yeah,
580
it's,
for the one and 31 for the other.
so yeah,
Yeah,
so
still
101,006,98,00 transfer from fund balance. It says $80,000.
Mhm.
So what we're doing there is we're taking that $80,000 from ARPA. That's what that transfer in
Okay.
is.
Mhm.
So it's not really coming from the general fund.
Right.
That number is gonna go up significantly because we have the SAD coming on 66th Street. So we received $478,000 from that. Some of that's been spent already because we have the financial advisor, we have the bond attorney, we had our regular attorney working on it. There's some engineering costs associated, but all of that is gonna be transferred back in. So it's gonna look like we're taking a huge amount out of the general fund, but that was money that is specifically meant to be spent on the construction costs for the SAD, or for the water main
Mhm.
extension on 66th Street. And then the 80,000, which is listed right now, that is what's coming from ARPA. So it's not really, we're not proposing any transfers in from the general fund in general.
Mhm.
They're coming from specific things, so we're not taking anything out of the general fund to make numbers match.
Right.
That makes sense. And another thing that we did this year is that the expenditures and the revenues do not match. The revenues exceed the
Mhm.
expenditures, but we wanted a kind of more accurate picture of what was actually left over in the fund balance. So that's a change that we're gonna propose this year from last year. Trying to think of other things that we wanna highlight, cause it's just, I'm sorry, this is terrible.
I wish
Doesn't
I
bother
could
me.
copy this one, it's all broken up the way we were used to.
We should have made copies for us.
I honestly, you didn't ask me, we didn't discuss what you were handing out, we should have.
John, is there something that you
I
want?
made a list of some things to point out.
Okay, that's perfect,
On
thank
the
you.
expense side, because
Yeah.
there aren't huge changes. We are recommending, again, an additional contribution to the pension fund.
Right,
We'll be getting our actuarial numbers very soon, because we're trying to get up to 60%, we're in the 50s.
right.
So I think is it 60,000 we put in again, or?
Yeah, you put in, actually, it's more like, I think you put in 180,000, so right now we're budgeted to
Okay,
spend.
that might be more than we need, so.
Oh, no, wait.
No, that doesn't sound right.
No, yeah, you put in
80.
60,000,
60,
60,000,
okay.
yeah, 60,000.
So that's in there.
Yeah.
Good.
The ordinance, the ordinance review consultant, Daniel pointed that out,
Right.
that 80,000, that's in here.
Yeah.
Something I've talked, I hope with everyone, including Brenda, over the last 6 months, that's in the budget, it's not set in stone, but there's a possibility in what year, in March of 2023, I might choose to become a board treasurer, like you. Steve will then be on Medicare. So I have budgeted for a full-time deputy from January to June. So they're there for training. I would be here to see us through the
Right,
tax. year.
right,
And again, I might change my mind.
yeah,
But
you dropped.
I've been
it.
talking about it.
Yes,
So there's 25,000 in here for a part,
yeah.
a deputy for 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh, something that didn't get in that we have talked about that we might want to add to is, you've heard this every year from me, but potentially a part-time or an hourly paid ordinance enforcer. Like a former
The enforcer.
police officer or
Keep
whatever.
your hood on.
because We've stepped up those efforts,
I'll do it
but
in my raincoat.
it's way more work than Lene and
Oh, I
staff
know,
in this last one, and you gotta take police protection. and,
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yes.
so
Yeah.
I think we should add that for the next go.
Oh,
If people.
I just, this week alone, I've had 2 complaints, people are really concerned
It's
and
gonna
don't
step
know what
up.
to do.
Yeah.
About one was an Airbnb next door
Oh, I
that's
know.
crazy. They said they sent us things for 2 years and nobody takes any action.
Yeah.
And another one is like an adding thing that a resident is
Yeah.
concerned about, and
Yeah.
And anyone who goes
and I
to the
drove by
lavender
and they
farm,
have a reason to be concerned,
the property across from the lavender farm looks worse than I think Outing ever did.
Where's the lavender
Yeah.
farm? It's on,
Is that 60 who, second?
it's one of the 60s,
Yeah.
65th.
Is it?
south of,
You just go up Wiley, it's one of the
Yeah.
first turns off
65th.
Wiley.
yeah.
Now,
Before the art garden.
I don't even remember what was across the street from it.
for those complaints I had, what do I do? Do I have them reach out to you, Lene, or who?
Yeah, you can have them reach out to me or Lene.
Okay.
I think you saw with Otting, they are complicated
Yeah.
and Brenda's probably seen, Otting already has another boat. They
Yes.
already are starting to,
It changes every single,
It
well,
changes.
because you drive
Well,
by it every
The
day.
county's kicking them out in March. They
Really?
gave them
Oh,
all free.
taxes?
They haven't paid taxes in 3 years. They're
Awesome.
on the
I mean,
They're
feel
on
bad,
the
but-
foreclosure list. I don't know why I called the treasurer. Why did you delay it? Just get rid of these people. And then so that lien, or we've had to put a lien on the house.
yeah,
Because they agreed to pay $7,000 that we've already paid for the cleanup. Why would I put that on their tax bill? They've never paid a tax bill.
yeah,
So we went to the lawyer and sent it to the county, but. So if and when they're kicked out and the county sells the house, then we'll get our money back, but I wouldn't count on it anytime soon.
Yeah. but they are, you have to keep in mind, they are complicated, so like you might
Yes.
enforce something and we might
Yeah.
spend money on something and then a week, 2 weeks later, you're seeing the same problem building up, so.
That's the unfortunate part about enforcement. It's not very satisfying and you don't
Right.
get what you want.
And it's costly.
And it's
It's
real slow.
It's frustrating for
I
our
know.
residents too,
Yes.
though. I mean, how would you like to live next to something
Oh,
like that,
gosh.
Well, I have friends downtown in the city that are pretty sure they're gonna move. Because nothing can be done about the Airbnb next door. to them.
Oh, it's
That's
downtown.
really sad.
Where is it?
I was worried you were gonna ask that. I still don't know my streets well enough. I'm thinking Francis, but I'm not sure.
Send me an email.
Just.
Down the hill, right?
I heard
They've all
about
become
the
Airbnbs.
Sonic Lodge that's getting out of control over there, and
Yeah.
like a guy living in an RV all summer, I don't know if anybody's aware of that, and,
The one on Blue Star?
yeah,
Now, is
yeah,
that ours or is that
that's township.
Douglas or?
No,
is
it's
it- Oh, it's Township, okay, I didn't know.
And they don't wanna have their name attached as a complainer, cause they're afraid of, you know, so,
Retribution,
and
yeah.
it's a problem.
Yeah,
So those were my highlights, that in terms of any significant spending change.
Yeah, and I kind of went through my highlights because there's the $200,000 appropriation out for the building.
Mhm.
There's the $80,000 for the zoning update, which is being funded by ARPA,
Mhm.
not the operating revenue. There is, I did put in there $10,000 for this outdoor discovery
Mhm.
contract. And I think I might have put a little more money in there thinking that, you know, we have just consistently been using consulting services. I don't think in the previous budget it was budgeted for the technology. I don't think it was I don't know if branding
Yeah.
was part of that, you know, original budget. So just a little more cushion in case for some whatever reason,
Unexpected, yeah.
there's a need for consulting services. Parks got a significant
Yeah.
increase. Their number might go up again because there was some confusion with what Jim had sent me in terms of the budget. I thought there was a repeat, but what he had done for maintenance was he had broken up need for maintenance this year and need for maintenance that has not been attended to in a few years. So he was actually asking for
So
more.
ongoing maintenance and then
Mhm.
special.
It was confusing.
Special
Didn't we go with 90,000? Total?
I don't know what the
I
total
think we
was.
did, they wanted 120 between the two lines, because they have a capital line in it.
Yeah.
So which is a
Yeah,
huge increase, even at 90, it's just not everything they.
And you
yeah,
mentioned earlier, when they were talking about maintenance, they're thinking about submitting grant apps, right?
they are thinking about submitting grant apps.
So for them to start preparing their maintenance schedules and what they're gonna do and what it's gonna cost is gonna be integral to that process, because they all wanna know sustainability,
Mhm.
meaning, you know, the future, are you gonna maintain it? How are you gonna maintain it? What are the
Mhm.
funds that you have and that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, and then this is something
So it's
that.
not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, and this is something that I don't know how many. I told this, but this is just it's an idea that's been floating around in my head and I haven't really fully thought it out, but one option that I've seen other communities do that might relieve some of the pressure. Financial, responsibility from parks is that some communities have in their road millage
Yes.
a caveat that says that some of these funds can be spent on the extension of bike trails and the maintenance of bike trails. And I believe that right now, this year, bike trail maintenance will cost them $4,000. So it's not a terrible amount, but they also don't have any funding for extending bike
Right.
trails
But last year it cost 30,000 because of the big repair.
Yeah,
because there was a big repair.
It could happen again.
right.
So it might be something to think about, like, because one of the road millages is on the ballot for November. You could pass a resolution that amends the language of that, I'm afraid on my words, it's been a long meeting. You could, you could amend the language, of the,
We need to do that, I think,
So,
absolutely.
and roads is pretty flush, their budget.
Yes.
roads is
Right.
really great, and
Yeah, and that's.
Every year I think.
Right, so
And-
that is the perfect,
Yes, yeah, and it's legal, I mean, it's
Right.
okay to do it.
yeah, the board would just have to
That's a
pass a
great-
resolution saying that we would want to
Yep.
include in the ballot language a provision that allows for us to spend money on bike trail maintenance and expansion using some of the roads funds, and Nick has said That sounds great.
So we would reword the one coming up in November.
We could, I haven't made
Well,
a decision, I'm just
yeah, I think it
thinking
would
like
be
this
good.
could be something we could
Yeah.
do.
I think sounds like we want to, so.
Sounds like you're getting support.
Okay, that
Without
sounds
taking
great.
any action.
Okay, that sounds great.
More, I just can't remember.
Right.
what
I will
it
look
is.
into it.
And if it helps the park budget.
Cool.
I want to point out, we ended up having an impromptu investment meeting this morning, which has been on our to-do list, Abby and myself. But even before that, for this meeting, I did a cash flow analysis. We've averaged over the last 6 months, general fund operating costs to keep us all running has been averaging $143,000 a month. Some months it's higher, some months it's lower.
Mhm.
Over a year, it's 1.7 million. Our current general fund bank account, the money we have in the bank, cash, is at $3.4 million today. That covers at least 2 years. And I think we agree that's a bit much. We don't need that much in the bank, and it's not
Yeah,
insured.
yeah.
So we are going to move forward in June and make a couple more financial
Or maybe
investments.
sooner.
What?
Oh, you're.
Oh, you want, it's right, I might be doing one tomorrow, that
Yeah.
time, but CD rates are inching up, we can buy CDs, we can buy bonds.
Right.
We're thinking of, I think initially doing another 500,000. I think we can do 1 million, but maybe not till next fiscal year. Or we
And by
can put-
inching up, I mean, all the rates are better than anything we have, even the short term,
right,
like,
even our best, yeah.
even a year is significantly better than our multi-year bonds and CD rates, so it's time, might as well
Mhm.
put that money to work.
So I just wanted to share,
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
affect the budget except
Right.
the general fund, what's in the bank account.
Right.
Oh, I'm gonna throw this out, wish list of mine, maybe in 2024, once we've done all the renovation here, I'd love to see a couple EV stations on the township hall.
I have had that thought. I think
They're
that's.
not that expensive and it's sort of a
Wonderful
beacon
idea.
of look who it, maybe we can do it next year. I've just never.
Yeah.
She'll
do
get
that.
my car back for them.
Yeah.
Oh, my, is it still a house?
So you
Tell the
can always
Outdoor
charge you,
Discovery
you don't have to
Center to
go all the
look
way
into
home.
that.
They could,
They could,
they could,
absolutely.
they have them at their, yeah, they
Right,
have them
yes.
at their
Ask
spot.
them about that.
Yeah.
I will.
That's cool.
Who has
Yes, I agree with
Oh,
you.
Outdoor
See,
Discovery
see,
Yeah, that's a
I-
long way to go.
I'm glad you brought that up,
Well, thank
because I've
you.
been thinking a lot about
Yeah,
that.
just, I
Yeah.
added it to my little list here. Is there more we need to discuss on the budget besides
Yeah.
when we, setting the meetings and when we approve it?
Yeah, the only
Or
other thing I
change it.
would point out is that for roads, I did include the $200,000 contribution to the county for repaving Old Allegan.
Oh.
And that resolution will be before you at the June meeting.
Okay, Great.
And Craig knows it, and he said that there is one other little, they're gonna propose it. He thinks that it'll probably go through, he's pretty confident about that. But he does have to have all the other communities just sign off, but he doesn't think that's gonna be an issue. We are a little over, so there's gonna be, I think it's a $75,000 appropriation out of the road fund, because we have to perpetually, until it's done, perpetually include the repaving of 60th Street from Old Allegan
oh, yeah.
up, because we have not got Manlius Township to agree to pay for half of that, because we do share that road with them. I have been able to get in contact with the supervisor in Manlius, and I am going over to their township hall next week for coffee, and we are going to be discussing a few things, one of them being the ambulance service.
Mhm.
Make sure they're open.
No,
They're not open every day.
no, I know, I've been invited,
Yeah,
I've been
very
invited by the
good.
supervisor, yeah. And then the other thing is potentially sharing the cost, the maintenance cost of
Okay.
repaving 60th.
Yeah.
He might tell me that's no go for this year, he might say this is the year it's happening, so I included it in the budget. Just in case, just so we know that we are prepared, because I have been getting calls from
It
residents.
really needs it, doesn't it?
It does, it's on the Pazer rating, it's,
2?
yeah, it's a 2, it's really bad,
It's
Okay.
bad. And we have good ratings.
and we have good ratings,
Got a reputation to
We do.
uphold.
yeah,
Is it?
We choose.
We fixed the, never mind, the roads, the
Yeah.
roads.
the roads. So, yeah, stay tuned on that.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other items? Any public? Public comment?
Is there anybody on?
Oh, but in terms of, do we feel the board need another budget workshop, or should we present a budget for approval at the June meeting?
I'm fine with that. Anybody else? Or do you think?
I think if there's anything that you guys uncover or becomes, significant, you could just share that information with us,
Yeah.
email it, like,
Yeah.
hey, heads up,
Yeah.
this is gonna be different. Do we
Mhm.
need to call a special meeting?
Okay.
Or have some conversations, but if things kind of stay on the same trajectory, then
Cause I think it'd be nice not to have to schedule another meeting.
Yeah.
And just by coincidence, last year we adopted the budget on June 9th.
Mhm.
It was presented May 12th. It's a little later, but you know why, and it was worth waiting
Yes.
for, because we have a new person totally immersed and involved in the
Yes.
process. So thank you for everything you did today, it was amazing.
oh,
It
yeah,
was amazing.
Thank you.
very good.
But we
Thank
do
you
have to
all,
set
and you have
that
the-
truth and taxation meeting,
Okay.
Right.
which we usually do towards the end of the month. Should we try to set a date now so we all agree?
The end of May?
I mean, June,
Oh,
Or we can do
it
it.
can be as soon as we've done the budget, right?
I don't
Sabrina?
have my calendar with me, but, we can do it at the June meeting, right?
Can we? I don't think
No.
there's time to, is there time to post it?
If it's towards the end of June, then yeah.
Oh, no, I thought you said do it at the June.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
thought
thought you
we
said.
can do it anytime in June after.
Okay, set the meeting at that meeting.
Oh, you don't want to set, okay,
I don't care.
all right, well, if we can't, we can't.
bring your phones or calendars or whatever.
All right,
Yeah.
all right, because that's the one that has to run in the paper.
Right.
Cool.
Cool. No public comments? Adjourn?
Okay.
We'll adjourn this meeting.
We talked a lot about it.
Yeah.
We'll start
How about that?
there.
1 minute early.
Oh, God.